Hello beautiful friends, welcome or welcome back to my channel. I thought today we could recreate Sabrina Carpenter's makeup. Carolina Gonzalez is her makeup artist, and here are some of the pictures she shared on Instagram of Sabrina. She looks a lot more tanned than I am, so this is going to be a pale skin edition. And here's a close-up of the specific makeup look I'm going for. Carolina actually very helpfully shared on Instagram the exact products she used, so I'm going to use as many of those exact products as I have. They're mostly complexion ones. And let's get started. Sabrina often has a very radiant complexion, so I'm going to start off by using the Dior Forever Glow Veil. It's very lightweight and gives the skin a beautiful sheen. It also dries down by itself a lot, so it's not going to budge. I tend to use 2 pumps, and I like just pressing it into my skin until it's sunken in. Sadly, I squeezed a spot so hard the other day that I've caused a bruise, so I need to cover that up. For now, we're just focusing on radiance though, and I think this is perfect. Carolina uses the Giorgio Armani Luminous Silk Foundation, so I'm using it in the shade 2. This foundation has such a beautiful finish, and the coverage is amazing for how thin it is. I'm going to use the Hourglass foundation brush to apply it because it's quite dense. I want my skin to look really flawless, and because denser brushes don't soak up much foundation, they tend to give a fuller coverage finish. It glides on so nicely over that Dior primer. I applied a couple of pumps to the back of my hand, and if I were using a sponge I probably would have needed that much, but I think 1 pump would have been fine. This is another product that sets mostly by itself and remains luminous without being sticky. I would say it's medium coverage, so it didn't completely cover up my bruise. For now though, my complexion is nice and evened out and doesn't look too much like I have makeup on. This foundation doesn't cake at all, so you can build it up to full coverage if you prefer. The Armani Luminous Silk Concealer is another product Carolina uses on Sabrina. I would usually use a very pink concealer to neutralise my dark circles, but for the sake of using the same concealer Carolina used, let's try this. Because it's also part of the Luminous Silk range, it's very similar in finish to the foundation. This is also shade 2 by the way, so it's the exact same shade as the foundation. They work so beautifully together and give a really stunning even base. I actually didn't need this much concealer under my eyes, so I switched from using my middle finger to my ring finger to blend. That way my middle finger takes away some of the excess. It worked under my eyes surprisingly well, but I think I need something a bit thicker for my bruise. My NARS Soft Matte Pot Concealer is my absolute go-to for covering up blemishes. This is the shade Chantilly. I would usually use this under makeup and use a very fine brush to paint it directly over the spot, but because I already have makeup on, I'm just dabbing it in the general area. This concealer has not once let me down. I'm also using it to conceal this little spot on my cheek. Now that we're kind of verging on Sabrina levels of flawless, let's set these cream products in place. I will say though that in an interview last week, Carolina did say that she barely sets Sabrina's face, and when she does she keeps it on the T-zone only, but I have very oily skin. So for me it's more manageable to mattify my face and then add back that shine using highlighter. She actually doesn't like using powders on Sabrina because she'll sweat it off on stage, but I'm personally not planning to do any performing, so I think I'll be okay. I'm using the Airbrush Brightening Flawless Finish Powder by Charlotte Tilbury and my Charlotte Tilbury Powder and Sculpt brush. That way I can set my makeup without it being too mattified. I also applied less than I normally would, so I didn't wipe out any of the radiance underneath. I very excitingly have both shades of the Armani Luminous Silk Glow blushes that Carolina uses. Sabrina wears a lot of blusher, so I'm going to use my Spectrum A01 brush, which is nice and fluffy. And I'm starting with shade 52, which is that very bright pink. Sabrina's face is rounder than mine, so she suits blusher on the apples of her cheeks much better than I do. Because of her fringe, I can't really tell how far Carolina takes it up, but it looks as if she brings it onto her temples. I'm using my Charlotte Tilbury Powder and Sculpt brush again just to apply shade 51. Because I'm so pale, the colour combination looks a bit extreme on me, so I just softened the edges. And once I've done my eyebrows and the rest of my makeup, I think this will look a lot better. Now it's time for highlighter. This is the Glint Cosmetics highlighter in the shade Milky Moon 04. And I'm applying it using the fan end of the iconic London brush I just used to soften my blusher. Again, the apples of Sabrina's cheeks are quite prominent because of her face structure, but I'm just mirroring Carolina's placement. So I'm applying it to the centre and the high points of my cheekbones, my brow bones and the tip of my nose. We're looking very nice and radiant. I will intensify the highlighter later by the way, this is just the first layer. Now onto the brows. Sabrina has lightish blonde hair and quite dark eyebrows, so I'm going to try and mirror that contrast. She also has very fluffy brows, whereas mine are naturally thinner, so let's see what we can do. First I'm going to use the Anastasia Beverly Hills Brow Freeze Brow Styling Wax. And I'm using this spoolie to brush up my brows as much as possible. This wax has such amazing hold. My plan is to get my brows as big as possible and then use a pomade to fill them in so they look more natural. I think a lot of Sabrina's youthful appearance comes from her straight brows as well, but mine are pretty arched. I simply do not have the skills to be reshaping my eyebrows, unfortunately. I waited for about a minute for the wax to completely dry, and now it's time to fill them in. Did my camera delete the part where I actually filled them in? Yes, it did. But this is the Refi Brow Pomade in the shade Medium. I could definitely have gone darker with the shade, but I think the blockiness helps to accentuate them. I love the thin little applicator that this comes with because you can really create those tiny brow strokes. Sabrina's eyebrows are bushiest at the front, so that's where I focused the product. Now the blush is looking slightly less extreme. It looks like her makeup artist really subtly tightlines her eyes, so I'm just scribbling the Huda Beauty Creamy Coal eyeliner in the shade Very Brown into my lash line. Then I'm removing any product that got onto my lid and using my finger to blend any excess on my lower lash line. It makes my lashes look fuller without looking like I'm wearing eyeliner on my upper lash line. Sabrina seems to wear some kind of subtle brown eyeshadow along her lower lash line, so I'm just using the eyeliner excess to mirror that. Now that my eyes look more prominent, I'm going to curl my lashes using my Tweezerman curlers. And I know this is a weird order to do things in, but I'm applying mascara before eyeshadow. I want my lashes to look nice and long like Sabrina's, so I'm using the Maybelline Firework mascara. In hindsight, it probably added a bit too much volume, but at least the length is there. I was sent this mascara in PR and I've been testing it for the last couple of weeks. I really like it, but it's very difficult to get off in the evenings, even with an oil-based cleansing balm. It does not smudge at all though, which is amazing. Again, because of her fringe, it's quite difficult to tell if she's wearing eyeshadow. I'm pretty sure there's a bit in the crease though, and then some pink glitter on the lids. I'm using the Clio Shadow Gallery palette in the shade 01. I'm taking this first lighter brown shade along my crease just to add some definition, and then I'm sweeping this slightly darker shade along my lower lash line over the eyeliner. I'm sticking with the cooler tones of the palette because I don't want any of them to clash with the pink. And I'm being really light-handed with the shadows so they don't look too intense. I spent a bit of time blending to make sure everything looked nice and seamless. The shimmer she wears on her lids looks quite pale, so I'm going to use this final shade from the Unleash Sheer Ballerina palette. It's more of a pink-tinted cream shade, which I think works well. I'm just using my finger to push it into my lids, focusing on the centre. Sabrina's shimmer does look like it's across the whole lid though, so I'm applying it all over. It's also quite prominent across her lash line, so I'm making sure I take it right down. Carolina definitely applies some white on nude eyeliner to Sabrina's waterline, at least the lower one, possibly to make her eyes look bigger, so I'm using the nude end of the Charlotte Tilbury Sleep Cheat Liner Duo. It makes the eyes look more dull-like as well, which I think is really sweet. Then I'm taking a small domed eyeshadow brush and applying some of that same glint highlighter from before in the corner of my eyes and down my nose. I do film in natural light, so my highlighter doesn't show up as much as it would on stage or with a ring light. Now I'm going back in with that same Maybelline mascara from before and applying it to my lower lashes. I'm also adding another coat to my top lashes. In hindsight, I think the mascara was a little bit much. I'm pretty sure Sabrina wears a full wispy top lash, so I'm using these Miche Blumen 3D eyelash in the shade number 10 Natural Brown. The band is also brown on these, so it blends into the eyeliner well. Eyeliner's another tricky one because it's difficult to see behind her fringe, but I think she tends to have quite a long brown wing. I'm using that same Huda Beauty Kohl liner from before. Now to add some more radiance into the complexion, I'm using the Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush Flawless Setting Spray. This makes everything blend together so nicely and it leaves a really pretty dewy sheen on the skin. And while the setting spray is still drying down, I'm going to use this Queen Cosmetics pigment to intensify the highlighted areas. Applying powders wet makes them a lot more pigmented. I'm happy with the eyes and the complexion now, so time to move on to lips. I don't have the exact Armani lip products that Carolina uses, but I think I found good alternatives. First, I'm lining my lips with the Peri Pera Ink Velvet Lip Liner in the shade Rosy Nude. Carolina overlined Sabrina's lips a fair amount, especially in the Cupid's bow area. Her lips tend to be a deep rosy nude. Then I'm filling in my lips with this YSL Beauty lipstick in the shade N5. It's a similar tone to the lip liner but slightly lighter, so it helps to give that contoured look. Sabrina's lips have kind of a satin finish, so not too glossy but definitely not matte. And I think this combination works really well. I really should have got a wig to finish this look. Overall, I think the complexion and the lips look good. The brows could have been darker and straighter though. I think the waterline eyeliner could have been whiter and the mascara could have been less intense. I don't think it's bad for a first attempt though, and I absolutely love this makeup. And we are done. Thank you so much for watching. I'd absolutely love to know your thoughts in the comments. Goodbye.